Honorable Sri Ram Madhavji, a national thinker, Professor Badri Narayanji, Director of our institute. Sir, I would like to introduce the institute. The G.P. Pant Social Science Institute is a premier research and teaching institute in the social sciences and developmental studies in Bharat. It was established in the year 1980 under the joint auspices of the Indian Council for Social Science Research, the Government of India, and the Government of Uttar Pradesh. The institute works to fulfill the mission of developing a social science knowledge base to build models of sustainable development and consumption in the face of global socio-economic changes. The main concerns of the institute range from reducing poverty to promoting participatory, self-sustainable, and efficient public policies in health, education, community welfare, and land reform with a view to building human, organizational, and social capital. Sir, you will be happy to know the Institute has collaborated on a number of projects with the Indira Gandhi Rashtriya Manav Sangrahalaya Bhopal and is presently working with the Royal Tropical Institute KIT Amsterdam, Netherlands and IMWO Suriname. The institute is also collaborating with social science institutions in many countries through ICSR. The book because India comes first. Reflections Nationalism, Identity, Culture by Sri Ram Madhavji. It is a collection of some essays on contemporary political scenarios and debates. It consists of five major sections and 53 subsections in it. The book is a showcase of Indian politics, national identity, and its fascinating culture. We G.P. Pant Institute of Social Science and uh, Institute is very much happy to debate on the book which is under a big debate, cultural debate in the nation. We are very much privileged by contribution of sir in the pandemic itself on behalf of our institute and behalf of all my colleagues, I heartily welcome you and all my colleagues. Thank you very much. Welcome. Heartily welcome.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, I request Director Professor Badrinaran to say a few words about this book discussion program and our institute. Thanks.
Thank you. Already our chairman have welcomed our distinguished guest, Sri Ram Madhavji. Ram Madhavji is very eminent social activist and very fine mind of our country, who thinks, who writes, who intervene in the discourses, and he always try to interact with the recent challenges posed by our Indian society. And I am very impressed by his writings. I used to read, we all used to read his writings. And it's a good moment, opportunity that this book came out, and you will discuss what's in this book. And I will not take much time because there is paucity of time. He has to leave for the airport, and we want to listen him more than what we have to say. So, but a few words about the institute. Already, Professor Khattimaniji told about the institute, and we were discussing while having tea, and we told about the institute to him also. So, but two things that this institute is one of the research institute in the North India who is working, documenting and giving policy suggestions to the government. So it's one of the think tank of North India, and we have the biggest library of social science in the North India. And this is only we had 2-3 institutes in this Patna, Banaras, and Lucknow. But this institute continuously working on understanding our society and reshaping policy of the Indian government based on the need of the society. So, and we have students, we have around 250 students in the campus, PhD for our PhD program and our MBRD Rural Development Master Program. This is one of the programs which produce the management experts of the rural development in India. And our students are working in various social NGOs, social movements in reshaping the rural development of India. So and those students are also linked with this program. Our PhD MPhil program student, our MBA, the Master of Rural Development program students, they are online. They are participating in this program. So it's not only offline; it's also online. And various people of this city, intellectuals of the city, they have also joined. They have with this discussion. So it's also online. So your audience is offline and also online. So I think we don't have much time to show you our campus, but sometime I requested Professor Sriram Madhavji, please come here for some more time and give us some more time and stay here 1 or 2 days, see our institute. So let's see in the future. We hope that you will come again and you will stay here with us for some time. So, Pune.
Thank you, sir. So, though Sri Ram Madhavji doesn't need any introduction because he has been in public life from last 3 decades, still I will give a brief overview of his work. So, Sri Ram Madhavji, an Indian thinker, author, politician, and eminent social activist. He is a member of Governing Board of India Foundation, a New Delhi-based premier think tank which seeks to articulate Indian nationalistic perspective on the issues of national and international importance. He is also a mentor at Vision India Foundation, New Delhi, based think tank, working on public leadership among youth. Sri Ram Madhavji was primarily a student of engineering and earned his diploma in electrical engineering. Further, he received his postgraduate degree in political science from University of Mysore, Karnataka. He has written several books in English and Telugu, with the most recent one being Because India Comes First, Reflection on Nationalism, Identity and Culture. His previous book was also very famous, which was entitled Uneasy Neighbors, India and China After 50 Years of War. Apart from this, he has written for several national newspapers and magazines, including the Indian Express and Open Magazine, to name a few. He has also been the editor of Bharati Pragya, a monthly magazine in English published by Pragya Bharati, and associate editor of Jagriti, a Telugu weekly. He has traveled to over 30 countries and has addressed prestigious forums like Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, World Peace Conference at the Mahachulang Kaur Raj Vidyalaya, that means University of Thailand, Halifax Security Forum in Canada, Second Sochi Eurasian Integration Forum in Russia, and the BRICS Political Forum in China. He is also a foreign policy expert and instrumental in highlighting Indian perspective in several global platforms. We are fortunate that Sri Madhavji has come in person to Prayagraj for this program. So, I request Professor Bhaskar Majumdar, who is Professor of Economics at G.V. Pant Social Science Institute, to give a brief overview of the book entitled Because India Comes First, Reflections on Nationalism, Identity and Culture, which is written by Sri Ram Madhavji and has been published few months back by Westland Publications. Sir.
Thank you. My task is easy in the sense that about the author is already told you. I will go in very brief. And welcome part has been done by the President Board of Governors and the Director of Sambandha. What I will talk about on this book, because India comes first, is unstructured in the sense that after I have gone through very carefully the thought content as documented in the book, I did not dare to write the review part of it, to articulate it, and also for a second reason that perhaps it will not be proper to send it to journals for publication for one, unless you publish, for one simple reason that it is, I mean, the book is around 285 pages, 283, 285. It could have been 985 had you focused on major issues. Those are very vibrant, very serious, very important, historically, culturally, in terms of personalities, identities, and all. Uh, a total of 53 articles, many of those published in major national dailies like Indian Express, etc. Let me start like this. Because India comes first. Who questions? India comes first. No doubt about it. And India as country represented by a state and people or nation, and as a civilization, most of which have remained undocumented because of oral history. Uh, mm, I mean, it becomes really difficult to explain in a single book why India comes first. And if one goes long back into history, documented or undocumented, the countries like India or China or Mysore, that is Egypt, then Iraq, all these countries had their own development and oral discourse that had been much older than the countries, West European countries and US, that came much later on the axis of what they call development. We may not, because the axis is different in many cases. And here comes the major issues that you talked about, like discussing on Gandhi and Mandela, or Mahatma and Medina. Now, Mandela was in jail for 27 years, and Gandhi was for a very big period. Mandela's country, South Africa, previously Rhodesia, that had to wait up to 1985 to get decolonized or independent. And probably, as you hinted at, our independence with partition, that probably was in a hurry, because partition itself reflected that hurry. I mean, why was that hurry? That needs to be explained in much more detail, in my understanding, who suffered on east and west. On one side, Bengal, and the other side, Punjab. Now, East India is probably different from British India, but then historical analysis is there. On the one hand, you have pre-1947 India, and then you have post-1947 India. And many of the cultural dimensions that you talked about have uh, briefly focused on those things. What I felt privileged and fortunate to know from the book as a reviewer was the sharp sentences, the focused points, the straightforward and brave uh, focus on issues that many of the scholars, particularly in the academia, may not dare to write. And there you differ from the conventional academicians. That is particularly this book. I have not read your other book. But this I snatched from Maghribi to keep with me to make a library and put it there in Kolkata, etc. etc. Now, coming back to your book again, no doubt, as a citizen of India, as a senior citizen of India, as a person living in India, that India comes first, it has to come first. And the articles that you elaborated on, 53 articles, it could be more, it could be less, that is not the point. But if one thinks that it is a political book, I say no. It is not political party-based book. It is not, in my understanding, politics-based book. It is a book more on cultural dimensions that reflects India's civilization. It is a book on identity question because CA issue also comes in your book. NRC issue also comes in your book. So that identity and also you included international dimensions. I mean, the book is so vast. I mean, 285 pages is very less to explain all these things from state regional issues to international issues, including India's relationship with hostile neighbors, good neighbors, what India could have been, why it is not, the Rohingya issue, I mean, all the from past issues being carried forward to present issues, either kept in abeyance or being looked into with many of the problems that the state faces. Those have been discussed in this book. I will not talk much on this because it is very much unstructured. I did not write it. So, whatever I thought I should say, in very brief, I have. Now it is for the author to talk on this, and I hope to go beyond this. Thank you, Ram Madhurji, for such a nice book.
Thank you so much for relative overview of this book. So now, with the permission of audience and Ram Madhurji, I would like to request Sri Ram Madhurji to deliver his address about the book. Sir.
Thank you. My regards to Chairman Professor T.V. Katmani, Director Professor Badri Narayan, Professor Bhaskar Majumdar, Professor K.N. Bhatt, Dr. Kunal Keshri, and several other faculty members present here, and all those who are participating in this book discussion today online. Thank you, Professor Majumdar, for that initial briefing about the book. It was not intended to be a very structured book because it's just a compilation of my writings over a period of several years. But the title, Because India Comes First, is important in the sense that if there is any one underlying theme in all those writings, which, as you very rightly pointed out, cover issues of identity, issues of nationalism, issues of culture, issues of domestic politics, as well as the international politics. But if there is any one underlying theme, that is that Rashtra Sarvopari, India comes first, nation comes first. Now, I belong to a school of thought which has always held nation to be the supreme uppermost idea. Professor Majumdar talked about pre-1947 and post-1947 India. It's a very important distinction to make. In fact, one of my books in Telugu dealt with the theme of partition. We became free India after partitioning our country. Partition has not only affected us in terms of our geography. Of course, our geography was affected. But it affected the whole thinking of all of us. Now, this theme becomes very important from that point of view. So let me begin from there. I probably won't be repeating about what I have written in this book. That will reduce the purchase value of the book. So I will probably develop on the theme and I will give you some idea about why I have written all those different articles. See, when we were making our constitution, the Constituent Assembly, it met for almost 3 full years, a little less than 3 years. And by 26th of November 1949, we came out with the final draft of our constitution. During the course of the Constituent Assembly debates, every single article was discussed threadbare in a very open and transparent manner. Those debates are available, anybody can access them. The preamble of our constitution begins with a statement, we the people of India. When this preamble was being made, there was an interesting discussion that took place in the Constituent Assembly as to whether we should copy the American Constitution and call ourselves the people of India, because the American Constitution also begins with this statement, we, the people of the United States of America. We actually copied it from there. We borrowed it from the American Constitution. So some of the members of our Constituent Assembly insisted that now that after all this confusion about whether India is one nation or multinational or Hindus and Muslims can constitute one nation or they should be two nations, after all this confusion, when you introduce our constitution, you simply say, we the nation of India. Are we the Indian nation? Start like that. So that at least the question of one nation, one national identity is established right at the beginning of the constitution. But some senior members of the Constituent Assembly felt otherwise. They felt that the questions about our national consciousness, they still remain unanswered. So we cannot call India as one nation. So let us stick to this description, we the people of India. So firstly, this whole problem that are we a nation or not a nation was left unaddressed fully at the time of the making of our constitution. Of course, you may say that, but then we have called it as India. That means we called it a nation. No, Article 1 of the Constitution describes India as a union of states. राज्यों का संघ है. So, entire constitution does not have this word nation. We talked about minorities, we talked about majorities, we talked about so many other things in the constitution. But this one issue that India is a nation, one nation, has not been resolved at the time of the making of the constitution. So at that time it was said that in India we have caste consciousness, religious consciousness, consciousness of various kinds, but not the national consciousness. So we have to build a national consciousness in the country. Thereby, you can finally make a new nation out of the partitioned India. Now, on that premise, we began our independent journey. People like me always felt that the kind of challenges that we faced in the last 7 decades of our independent life So the roots of those challenges lied in that one important omission or confusion, whatever you want to call it. When you are not one nation, you have to yet to become a nation. What automatically follows is you have to give precedence to rights than to the duties. That is what has happened in our constitution. In Indian constitution, rights come first and duties come later. Why it happened so was because in American constitution, rights come first. In America, what happened was then when those 14 different independent states came together in 1786 and by 1788 they became one United States of America under that constitution. The first thing they demanded was that first of all define our individual rights. So first 10 articles of the American Constitution are about, it's called Bill of Rights. First 10 articles. There, those states came together to form a nation called United States of America on the basis of a kind of political agreement. You give me these rights, then I am with you. I think some of you know that there, states like Texas, even to this day, hold a right to secede. I mean, right to separate from America is also a right in the Constitution. Constitutionally, they are provided those rights. So, why I am mentioning this is that in India, yes, I agree with Professor Majumdar that if you ordinarily ask anybody, we very naturally say, what nonsense are you talking? What do you mean by why? Because India comes first. Of course, India comes first. That will be the natural instinctive response of it, a response of all of us. But sadly, as a country, we had some initial confusion about it that has led to a number of problems in this country. That has led to regionalism, that has led to casteism, that has led to many social, political evils in this country. So first of all, we needed to put this whole confusion to rest. I consider that the rise of, it's not about just a political discussion. I'm not talking just in terms of politics. A rise of a party which is wedded to this idea of nation first, one nation, nation first, has largely addressed that issue. That after all, nation should be paramount. Rashtra Sarvopari. Baki, all other, our preferences, priorities, our rights, they should be subsumed in the larger national good and national interest. So that is one major transformation that has taken place. So I would put it this way, that what we left ambiguous or unanswered at the time of the making of our constitution has now been probably fully answered. Today, everybody in this country across this spectrum agree, whether he is a congressman or he is a BJP man or he is a regional party man, all of us now agree that yes, India is a nation and an ancient nation. At least on that, there is now a larger, broader consensus. I think that is very important, but that's a very important achievement that we have made. Now, from here, we have to move forward. For moving forward, I set 3 agenda items. I just speak about those 3 agenda items and I close, then maybe we can have some discussion about it. One of them is the political agenda item. When we became independent, when people asked Gandhiji about the kind of model that India should become, Gandhiji's very instinctive and very spontaneous answer was Ram Rajya. India should become Ram Rajya. Gandhi explains, if you read Gandhi's letter, he says, by Ram Rajya, I do not mean any theocratic state. Hindu Rajya maine keh raha hu. Ram Rajya is a state where the citizen's voice prevails. Now one may say, but what is democracy? Democracy is citizen's voice only. Nehru was asked the same question. Nehru's instinctive answer was parliamentary democracy. We will be adopting the Westminster model. And he was asked, why do you prefer democracy? His answer was, it is the second best available form of governance. Nobody will adopt the second best. People will go for the best. So then the question was, then what is the best according to you? Nehru's answer was a very loaded answer. He says, yet to be invented. Now the point is, you have a best available model in the form of democracy. But today, as you enter 2021, you are face to face with certain very serious challenges that emanate from this very modern democracy. Now from Black Lives Matter agitation in America to their attack on American Congress. By the way, these two were done by two opposite parties. Black Lives Matter was led by the Democrats, are supported by Democrats. Antifa was a Democrat-supported movement. The attack on the Capitol Hill was by the supporters of the Republican Party. So both parties, in their own way, were challenging democracy, supporting violence, political violence. From there to today in India, whether it is farmers' agitation on the outskirts of Delhi, the question is, what is the legitimacy of a democratic government, democratically elected government? Today we are questioning the very basis of democratically elected governments. The democratically elected government will say that, yeah, I am democratically elected. People have given me mandates, so I have a right to make laws. But people say, no, I don't agree with your right to make laws. Who is right, who is wrong is a different discussion on issues. Like, on farmers' issue, there can be a separate discussion. I'm sure in your institute you will have it at some point. But the fundamental issue about the very, very challenge that democracy is facing. Now, in this kind of scenario, two things will happen. One is either democracies, because of their very vulnerability, because in democracies, people have voice, free voice. Because of their vulnerabilities, either they will be further weakened, they will face further challenges. Like people today, if you read American papers today, not a single day passes without a reference to the future of American democracy. They are all greatly worried now. What will happen? Maybe you have managed to change one president and managed to bring another president, but the damage that has been done to democracy, whether we will be able to overcome it or not, the divisions that have been created. So democracies, either they will be weakened. This one development can happen, but the opposite also can happen. Looking at this anarchic situation, you may see the rise of authoritarians. Democratically elected authoritarian. You are faced with this dual challenge for democracies today. We have to now seriously look at how to strengthen the very concept of democracy. That is where I think we have to relook at what Gandhi used to say about Ramaraj. Ramaraj definitely is not a theocratic state. But Ramaraj, if I were to, because I have so many eminent intellectuals in front of me, I will use a phrase. Ramaraj is a non-majoritarian democracy. Can there be a non-majoritarian democracy? Because after all, democracy means majoritarianism. But can you have a system which is elected by a majority but not majoritarian? Today, we need to look for some such political structure that can reflect the aspirations of not just those who got elected, but also those who could not get elected. how do we bring both of them on board? In other words, how do we build larger consensus around the state in a very democratic manner? Now, consensus is built in many ways. There is larger consensus in China on any issue, because if you disagree, you will disappear. You know, where is Jack Ma? That is the subject today. No, I'm not talking about that kind of consensus, a forced consensus. So that is where the Gandhian idea of Ram Rajya has to be brought back. You know, the moment we hear about the very word Ram Rajya, we are put off. Kya Ram Rajya hai? But no, Ram Rajya has to be, given an opportunity, given a serious thought. So that is one challenge we need to address. It's at the political level. Now that brings me to the second issue of society. Here, I would urge all of you, if you have not read it, if you have not gone through it, the last address that Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar gave to the Constituent Assembly on the 25th November 1949. He delivered the final speech as the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution of India. In that, he gives 3 warnings. I don't go into the detail of all those 3 warnings, but what he essentially says is that we are, through this constitution, we are giving political democracy to the country. But unless we secure social democracy in this country, this political democracy will remain meaningless. So the second societal level challenge is to achieve social democracy. What do I mean by social democracy? This I have written in 1 or 2 of my articles in this book. No, social democracy is not merely about representation. One may say India has social democracy because you have reserved seats for scheduled caste, you have reserved seats for scheduled tribes. No, there is a demand that you should reserve seats for women. You do that, then social democracy is achieved. No. It's not about numbers. It's about social participation in decision making. This country's destiny, when it is decided in any X area, Y area, Z area, are all the different stakeholders they are represented? Are they a part of it? Or you have social democracy at the grassroots? At the macro level, you have it. But when it comes to the top is dominated by only one section. It is here that the real urge is today. Whether it is a demand for reservations for women, why does it come up? Because it's a feeling that we are not there at the decision making level. We are there. हम भी है, ornamentally है, दिखाने के लिए है. But are we really able to take the decisions? No, we are not there. Do religions feel they have a stake in this country? Do castes feel that they have a stake in the decision-making process of this country? So it is here that social democracy becomes a very, very important thing for a country like India. So we need to think about more mechanisms, more innovative ways of making this social democracy more functional and more effective. Third is, of course, I would put it this way: Gandhi, Vinoba, Deen Dayal. These 3 people talked about a particular type of priority for economy. They called it Antyodaya. Antyodaya is a particular type of economic model, which Gandhiji talked about it, Vinoba talked about it, and Deen Dayal Upadhyay talked about it, by which they meant that countries' economic prosperity should be gauged not from GDP, but from GDP per capita. in terms of GDP, हम भी बहुत क्लेम करते हैं कि हम अभी 5वां देश है दुनिया में. We are the 5th largest economy in terms of GDP, 7th largest in terms of GDP PPPA criteria, purchasing power criteria. So do you know the per capita GDP? What is our number? 148. Per head GDP ने एवरेज इंडियन सिटीजन का प्रॉस्पेरिटी के हिसाब से हम कहीं है और दुनिया में कोई कह सकता है कि साहब आपका पॉपुलेशन बहुत ज्यादा है. Yes, partly that's also a problem. We have huge populations compared to many Western and so-called developed nations. So naturally, your per capita GDP will be definitely lower. Even China is on 64th position in per capita GDP. But China-India populations are almost, I mean, about 100 million difference. But they are at 60, in 60s, we are at 150, 140s. So we need to seriously work on creating a prosperous India at the grassroots. In fact, I would urge institutions like this G.V. Pant Institute to create a prosperity lab. We don't have it in India. We should create a prosperity lab here. How do you create prosperity at the grassroots? It's not just about touching $3 trillion. India's economy has taken off. So वो तो आज नहीं तो कल $3 trillion बनेगा ही बनेगा. उससे तो after a few years it will become $5 trillion anyway. But are we able to distribute it? Are we able to create grassroots prosperity? What's our attitude towards prosperity in the first place? We are very romantic as a society. I have written about this romantic idea of how it really impacts our entire policy making. For example, you may contest me on this, but let me, this is an open topic that I want to share with you, that we have a great romantic idea that India lives in villages. Now, historically, tell me, when did India live in villages? Look at the empires. All of them are city-states. चाणक्य, आपके पाटलिपुत्र, आपके भारत के इतिहास में गुप्त वंश है, अदर हिस्टोरिकल एम्पायर्स है. They are all very well developed city states. India was an urban kingdom, well prospered. Until, and Agnes Madison's research shows that until the year 1000 AD, we were the topmost exporting country in the world, topmost trading country in the world. We and China together used to contribute almost 60% until 1500 AD. We were a great exporting nation. Exporting means you are prosperous, that's why you are able to export. But somehow something, because of the foreign rule, because of the exploitation, the economy has suffered. We have left our villages to their own plight. So today, it is important that we created village prosperity. And in that, please remember, I come from a village. Many of you must be coming from villages. We should not think that a person, a young man in village, will have any lesser aspiration than a person in Prayag or Kasi. He also has same aspiration. He also wants to have good life. He also wants to have good car, good house. Now, you say that no, हमको तो गांव, भारत तो गांव में जीता है, तुम गांव जैसा रहो. That is the reason why Dr. Abdul Kalam coined that phrase Pura, providing urban amenities in rural areas. Urbanization is not just a physical thing; it's a mindset. The amenities, the prosperity that you enjoy sitting in Delhi, sitting in other places, how can you deny it to a person sitting in a village? So today we need to create gross national wealth at one level, but this has to be distributed to the lowest unit at another level. It's a big challenge because it is here that we are suffering very badly. Unless you create that kind of a strong India. National strength, it's called national strength. Unless you create that national strength, India cannot compete in 21st century. Every one of us want India to play a very important role in the world today. And actually post-pandemic, the new world order provides a great opportunity for India to play a role. You know, one of my articles have written about Roosevelt in 1941. It's called the Roosevelt Way. Roosevelt was the president of America. Do you know that when he became the president of America, American economy was in a shambles. It was in a very bad state. It was in early 30s that he became the president. It was in a very bad state. He tried very hard to improve it, but until 1938, American economy did not improve. It was in a very bad condition when First World War broke out. Second World War broke out. When Second World War broke out, when the British, the French, the Italians, all of them were fighting. The French, the other European powers, Austrians and all, they were all fighting against Hitler and Mussolini. America did not join. America joined only in 1941. After this man described as the day of infamy. Roosevelt called the attack on Pearl Harbor as the day of infamy. After the Pearl Harbor was attacked, it was then that America joined the Second World War. When it joined, it was not a very strong country, but it had a strong leadership. It had a leadership with a vision. Once they entered the fray, they devised ways of making America great, but also giving a new direction to the entire world. Because of Roosevelt, Bretton Woods happened. WTO, etc. came into existence. Because of his initiative, subsequently taken forward by the leaders after him, that United Nations came into existence. And when the United Nations came into existence, it was Jefferson. But the foundations were laid by him. So, the Roosevelt way can be the way for India. I am not calling it the Modi way. Probably Modi ji also may not like it to be called Modi way, but the India way. India can now give a new direction for the entire humanity, because I am not going to talk about it, but please take it from me that the new world order that is going to emerge after the COVID, which is the phase we are entering now, the post-COVID world order will be totally different from the one that we have lived in all these decades. In that new world order, like after the Second World War, how a new world order came into existence, that was led largely by America, but also by Soviet Union for a few decades. This new world order will throw up new leadership in the world. One side, China is of course rising. China will try to determine a new world order for many countries in the world. But India also has the great potential to rise. But for that to happen, first of all, we have to address these basic issues. As I said, first of all, you have to address the issue of national identity. You must not conclusively say that we are one nation, period. That's why no special status to anybody. 370, 370 nahi chalega. A one nation hai bhaiya. Having resolved it, now resolve the question of social democracy. Let everybody have stakes in the rise of this nation. Otherwise, we will also have a Antifa here one day. And thirdly, build grassroots national strength. I think these three things are very, very important for India, for it to play a much bigger role in the post-COVID world order. Without doing it, because we have a strong leader, because we have a strong, political establishment, political system is strong and stable today, you can probably take on China on the borders, which we are doing it. It's a very important thing. I mean, we are today challenging them, standing in front of them, eyeball to eyeball, and challenging them. But in the greater global game, for us to challenge the rise of countries like China, we need to build a very strong India based on those three ideas: a strong democracy here, modeled on Ramrajya, non-majoritarian democracy. Secondly, a strong social structure here, which is described by Ambedkar as social democracy. And thirdly, an idea of grassroots welfare in the concept of Gandhi to Deen Dayal Upadhyaya called the Antyodaya. Once we achieve these three things, I think India will have a much greater role to play in the world in the coming century. Without that, if we only talk about 21st century India का बिलान करेगा वगैरह वगैरह, हम भाषण तो बहुत सुनते हैं, ऐसा अपने आप बिलान नहीं करेगा. ये बहुत ड्रीम्स हम देख लिए हैं. नेहरू जी के जमाने से हम तो रोमांटिक लोग हैं, अपन स्वप्न देखते रहते हैं. So you have to convert it into action. I think this is what is very important. Overall, I tried to address those issues in this book. That these are the things we have to do. So I talked about social democracy, how it can be achieved, how you can reform the political system, how you build larger consensus, how reasoning should be the basis for reaching certain conclusions, not romantic ideological commitment. I don't use the word ideology at all, because in my opinion, ideology is a closed frame of mind. You should have idealism, not ideology per se. Ideology है ना, आपने कोई तय कर लिया, उस पे बंधे हुए हो. दुनिया तो बंधा रहता नहीं है. Why should you should use bind your thinking to a particular framework? Let it be open. Idealism चाहिए. Idealism in the sense, whatever I do is because India comes first, because nation comes first. तो उस दृष्टि से कुछ लेखन है. I really thank Professor Badrinarayan ji and all of you for giving me this opportunity to share my ideas with all of you. We can have some discussion. Obviously, most of you might not have read the book, so you can discuss about issues that I have raised in my comments now. Thank you and namaskar.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful address, in which you have not only briefly presented your book, but also explained the idea of India as a nation. And simultaneously, you have also discussed the contemporary challenges to our democracy and the new world order, which emerged post-COVID situation. So now, floor is open for discussion. I request all of you to raise some questions, comments, but be brief as we have some time constraint.
We have 15-minute time for
Yeah.
question.
So please. Please introduce you in one line and yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. It was really a thought-provoking lecture by you, and we got a guide or a pathway how to think about our nation, how nation will come first. But I would like to one clarification from you. And sir, what will be the role of educational institutions in achieving these three goals? How that can be developed and created in our educational institution from primary level to the higher education?
Few comments and yes. It need not be just questions alone. You can have your comments also.
Yeah.
Comments also.
Madhavji, thank you. You're very charming. You have convinced us very well. And this question is for us from the gentleman. So he's asking how what the educational institution can play a role in the nation building. I'll begin your last comment where you said how we are, now challenging China, or just, I think we are standing with brave face and we are facing them. It's a very, I think, very relating to entire India or Indians who believe in nation. what we have, what the Indian nation is doing, what the government is doing. This is one aspect, bigger. Second, and the ideas. But this another aspect which we need to think to tie up this question, previous one, how we, as you have mentioned, Dharam Parayan nation or state or Ram how we achieve it everyday life. And I think that will help us to move forward what we are where. So what I'm trying to say briefly in one line is that one way is the ideas which are doing, we are doing very well on foreign policy, we are doing at the front very well, but how we percolate these ideas in everyday life. Paramparayan society कैसे बनेगी या जो institution है टूटने करना है अंत्योदय कैसे होगा अगर every citizen cannot participate or how we make enable these citizens to give them dignity like we are working here or everybody is working either in administrative officer, police department. It's like all these, as you have said, the all institutions to contribute to the make nation great or smoothly. So how we ensure the participation in working and dignity every day? That is could you kindly reflect?
Thank you, sir, for the thoughtful explanation. But my question is, in India, where so many marginal groups and big voices are still here, so isn't this again a romantic idea that to achieve the social democracy, where the voices will be heard or each voice should have equal kind of interference or force in decision making? Isn't it a romantic idea? Again?
I think, any more question? No?
Sir, as you have made a very, this book I have gone through once. It's a very nicely written book, sir, and I really congratulate for it. And I want to know, sir, there are certain areas, for example, you have worked in Jammu and Kashmir for many years. These are the areas which are consistently, challenging the idea of democracy. How your thoughts and how the view that you have reflected in this book will be implemented in the areas like this in India?
शिक्षा एक बहुत बड़ा माध्यम हमारे नेशन बिल्डिंग में हमेशा रहा है. I mean, if you go back to the life in ancient India, the Gurus played a very big role. I don't mean to say that we should bring it back. If it comes back, it's okay. But you cannot turn the time backwards. You cannot turn the clock backwards. What actually is needed today is, number one, that our institutions should do futuristic research. It has to be futuristic. Now, for example, I mentioned just one thing about the Prosperity Lab. How many ideas can come up about making India rich, making India prosperous? Today, what is happening is, I don't want to demean any institution. Probably you are doing a lot of research and a lot of hard work in these areas also. But who decides about it finally? What a village should get? It is a Babu sitting in your Sachwalaya in Lucknow. And he doesn't listen to you. Maybe you will submit your report there. But Hamare Babus, in my own family, I have Babus. So I have nothing against them. But they are Sarvagya. Sarvagya in the sense, he is an expert. So he will be in the Gobar Gas department today. Tomorrow he will be transferred to globalization department. There also he is the final authority. अगर आपको मैं सोशल साइंसेस से हटा के बायोलॉजी में डालूंगा तो आप हाथ पांव हिलाओगे. You can't do anything there. but not an IAS officer. He's all knowing. So we have an issue with this here. We have to, as a nation, we have to become futuristic. Why I'm saying this is, कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी ऑफ चाइना का मीटिंग होता है हर 3 साल में उनका एक लेवल का मीटिंग होता है जिसमें दे सेट आउट देयर टारगेट और हर 5 इयर्स में उनका जो जनरल काउंसिल मीटिंग होता है यू नो दे सेट टारगेट्स बेस्ड ऑन a very effective evaluation of their progress. They evaluate their progress in 5 years or 3 years. Then set targets for next 15 years, next 20 years. अभी लेटेस्ट मीटिंग में शी जिनपिंग talked about China in 2035. आज हमारे प्राइम मिनिस्टर 2022 तक तो जा रहे हैं। 2022 तक हम जब इंडिया से इंडिपेंडेंस होगा तो हम होमलेसनेस को समाप्त करना है। एक टारगेट है। I was reading a speech given by Xi Jinping. His speech contained a para about poverty alleviation in China. He said 9.87% population has been uplifted from utter poverty in China in 5 years or some duration he mentioned about it. This is the level of evaluation. 9.87 has been uplifted from poverty. We still have about 10% or 12%. That's the levels of utter poverty remaining in that country. No, what I'm saying is this kind of futuristic thinking we have to inculcate in our people. That's an important job that our institutions should do. So the entire educational edifice has to become futuristic. Today it is not. It is status quoist, mostly. But new education policy has come. It will hopefully transform us into futuristic thinkers. You know, there is a new word that is nowadays used by these gurus. The futurist gurus. The word is imagineering. We know about engineering, but they say you need to have imagineering. Imagineering means 2030 में इंडिया कहाँ रहना है? You should be able to have a blueprint. Have that imagineering first, 2030, 2050. Then do reverse engineering. If I have to be there in 2030, where should I be in 2029? Where in 28? Where in 25? Where in 22? हम वो नहीं करते, हम इधर से करते हैं. We are very ad hoc people. From ad hocism to can we move to imagineering in our entire educational training? It is very, very essential today. That's why I mentioned that how do you make the last man prosperous? The second important aspect that we all have to remember is, while education played a very important role in making this nation, equally important role, education, how many hours a child spends in a school? 5 hours a day? 20 hours or 25 hours in a week? But what about the rest of the time? 8 घंटा सो भी गया, सो भी तो 11 घंटा बचा है. This 11 hours के लिए हमारे पास कोई प्लानिंग नहीं है आज के दिन. When I was a child, this 11 hours also had a planning. I would go to a temple. वहां प्रसादम के लिए जाता था, but वहां कोई सुनना पड़ता था. कोई कल्चरल एक्टिविटी होती थी. My 11 hours is also planned besides my 5 hours in school. In this 11 hours also I am getting a lot of education. So we have somehow confined a child's education to just 5 hours in a day. How do you increase it? This is another challenge we have to seriously think about. Once you do that, this brings me to that second issue of, when you call, Dharma Prana Bharata, how to achieve it, whether you can. So this is possible when society takes it upon itself. So that is where government has to shrink in this country. Today what is happening is, everything in the country is government controlled. State, सब कुछ है. अगर बद्रीनारायण जी यहाँ कोई क्लास 4 एम्प्लॉय का अपॉइंटमेंट का रिकमेंडेशन नेता से आया, नहीं सुने तो बदल जाएंगे। एंड क्लास 4 एम्प्लॉय अपॉइंटमेंट भी डिसाइड होता है पॉलिटिशियन के द्वारा। आई मीन पॉलिटिक्स, आई मीन स्टिल आई एम सेइंग दिस। सो इतना कंट्रोल होता है। गांव में एक कांस्टेबल का अपॉइंटमेंट, टीचर का अपॉइंटमेंट, गांव में नाला कहां होना है, सब आज स्टेट तय करता है, स्टेट डिसाइड करता है, पॉलिटिशियन डिसाइड करता है। वही दिस सिचुएशन मस्ट चेंज। मोदी जी का प्रयास रहा है, नहीं मिनिमम गवर्नमेंट वाला कॉन्सेप्ट रहा है, बट नॉट इजी बिकॉज पॉलिटिशियन इज अ वेरी greedy animal. Every new law means more control on the society. भाई दुनिया में देश बिना कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के चल रहे हैं। रिटर्न का कोई रिटर्न कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन तो है ही नहीं, कन्वेंशन पर चल रहा है देश, चल सकता है ना। हम रूल के बाद रूल, लॉ के बाद लॉ ऐड करते जा रहे हैं कि नहीं जा रहे हैं? तो इन इंडिया यू नीड टू मेक पीपल more participatory, more I mean bigger stakeholders in the entire process of its development. That brings me to the third question of whether it is just a romantic idea, social democracy. No, this country has seen social democracy flourishing. I tell you, Indian history is always talked in terms of its wars. So is the case of the history in all the countries. History means wars, but there is social life in between the wars. It didn't exist. How peacefully it existed. राजा लोग लड़ रहे थे, समाज चल रहा था, कैसे चल रहा था? There was a system of running the society. In spite of the king, king was busy. पाटलिपुत्र का महाराजा बहुत युद्ध करता था। Society ran on the principle of stakeholdership. Every section of the society had a role, well defined, controlled by आज अगर ये प्रश्न में है कि सोशल लाइफ पर भी राजनीति हो गई है। जाति बताया, जाति क्यों होता है? एक ही कारण है कि मेरा जात का व्यक्ति हाउस में राज्यसभा में विधानसभा में बैठता है तो क्योंकि पोजिशन बहुत है, मेरा जात है। So where it was 1984. देख के पत्ती के साथ सिटी बस में वापस आ रहे थे, he was killed. आप आपके विलेज के काउंसलर में दे सकते हो, फॉर्च्यूनर से नीचे रहेगा ही नहीं वो, क्योंकि वेस्टर्न डेमोक्रेसीज में उन्होंने all the powers of the elected leaders are confined to the four walls of the assembly, four walls of the parliament. बाहर वो आपका मेरा जैसा है। वो आप ये करिए इंडिया में हाउस के बाहर तुम बाकी लोगों के जैसा हो यार, तुमको भी क्यों में खड़ा रहना पड़ेगा। ये करिए, कोई जातवाद नहीं बचेगा, क्योंकि कोई जात को फिर आकर्षण ही नहीं रहेगा अपना व्यक्ति वहां असेंबली में हो। You need to disempower politicians in this country. You have to de-glamorize politics in India. No, I have no contempt for politicians. Please don't take it that way, because I am myself a practicing politician. But इतना ग्लैमर। मुझे कल हमारे काशी, मैंने कहा ना काशी प्रयाग बहुत, काशी से बहुत अच्छा लगा मुझे, इसलिए कहा था क्योंकि काशी में इतना ट्रैफिक प्रॉब्लम था। तो ट्रैफिक प्रॉब्लम था तो हमको एक जगह गाड़ी आना था, वो आ ही नहीं पा रहा था जहां हम खड़े थे। It was not able to reach our place. We waited there for 10 minutes on the road. It's not coming. So I told Aditya कि यार सत्येंद्र will bring the car. Let's go by auto. हम ऑटो में चले गए, तो हम जहां जाना था वहां पहुंच गए। रात को मेरे पास सत्येंद्र का मैसेज है, मैं वेरी सॉरी भाई साहब, आपको ऑटो में जाना पड़ा। क्या फर्क पड़ता है, बट हमारे दिमाग में बैठ गया ना यार, ये ऑटो में कैसे जाएगा। ये ग्लैमर खत्म होना इंडिया में. So this social democracy is possible. In fact, our social life, though, everybody has stakes in the country here. I'm not talking about 2000 years ago's history. It is right up to, even up to independence. Our villagers were doing very well. Our social life was very good. But somehow post-independence, हमारे यहाँ social divisions बढ़ गए हैं. Partly the problem is also with politics. Don't blame politicians alone. There are other forces also. So I don't think it is just a romantic idea. I think it is achievable, even assuming it is a dream. This dream must become a reality. There's no way. You have to do it. How do you do it? आप लोग विद्वान हैं, सोचिए कैसे करना है. इसको करना पड़ेगा. Finally, about the J&K, largely the challenge to democracy has been overcome. Largely. It's no longer about democracy. Democratic process has now been accepted largely by people of the state. अभी ये जो DDC elections हुआ, उसमें 50% भी turnout था in Valley also. But there we still have a problem of radicalization. And I'm probably saying it for the first time in this audience because I have not said it in the past anywhere. So maybe first time I'm sharing it with you. Today, the challenge in Jammu and Kashmir is radicalization of the youth. आप मुझे कह सकते हो radicalization पहले भी था, वो different था. That radicalization was about Kashmirian. What is happening today is Islamiyat का radicalization है. आज कश्मीरियत कुछ नहीं है, वो फिर गया है. आज JKLF has become irrelevant. In fact, आज वैली के जो पार्टीज है, PDP, NC, even those parties are now confined to only those traditional followers. 1950 से जो families political activity में PDP को, NC को support करते आए हैं, वही रहे हैं politics में. एक big section is staying out of it. They are getting radicalized by a radical Islamist ideology. So today's challenge for all of us is to address this challenge. I will only give one suggestion to you. How do you address it? मैं RSS में रहा हूँ, RSS का ही हूँ अभी भी. हमारे ABVP होता था, हमारे BJP, हम एक स्लोगन देते थे, जम्मू कश्मीर हमारा है. और उसके साथ दूसरा लाइन जोड़ते थे, वो कश्मीर हमारा है जो सारा का सारा है. So, in fact, there is one article by me on that slogan in this book. जम्मू कश्मीर हमारा है का अर्थ क्या है? Are we talking about the geography? No. कश्मीर हमारा है का अर्थ है हर कश्मीरी हमारा है. जब इस देश के बाकी पूरे समाज को लगता है कि हर कश्मीरी को भी मेरा अपना बनाना है, तब हम इस रेडिकलिज्म से बाहर आ सकते हैं. आज आवश्यकता उस बात की, today's need is that the entire country has to embrace Kashmiris. Kashmir now has permanently become one with this rest of the country after the abrogation of Article 370. But Kashmiri also has to completely get integrated. Today, the youngsters are being misled. So, if you push them farther, they will go farther. If you try to embrace them, they will come closer. So, पहला ये है कि रोज का पेट्रियाटिज्म टेस्ट नहीं रखना उनको. रोज तुम पेट्रियाटिज्म प्रूव करो. हमको रखा जाता है क्या? डेली पेट्रियाटिज्म टेस्ट. बट कश्मीर का डेली पेट्रियाटिज्म टेस्ट होता है. रात को 9 बजे टीवी चैनल में होता है. कश्मीर ऐसा है, कश्मीर वैसा है. पहले वो डिस्कोर्स बंद करो, तभी कश्मीर ऐसा नहीं. मैंने कहा half the Kashmiris is actually voting, participating in your democratic process. Number 2, हम कितना कश्मीरी को अपनाते हैं, rest of the country is also an important issue that we should think about. So मेरा appeal to all of you, whenever pandemic ends, when you plan your next vacation, plan it to Srinagar, plan it to Amarnath. Gulmarg is as good as beautiful as Switzerland. go to Gulmarg. तो हमें आज उस दिशा में भी बहुत काम करना है, नहीं तो आई एम वरीड अबाउट दिस ग्रोइंग रेडिकलाइजेशन अमंग द यूथ ऑफ कश्मीर वैली स्पेशली। तो फिर से वही चलेगा, रेडिकलाइजेशन हो जाएगा, फिर उसको रोकने के लिए फिर आर्मी को भेजो, फिर वायलेंस होगा, फिर उसको रोकना है। तो एज ए कंट्री वी ऑल हैव टू एम्ब्रेस एवरी कश्मीरी। तो कश्मीर हमारा है का अर्थ है हर कश्मीरी हमारा है, ये कॉन्सेप्ट लेकर हमको चलना होगा। Thank you.
Just you must have heard the way Sri Ram Madhavji presented his thought, and he's a very powerful speaker, and the way he convinced us. And you have not read his book. This is the book, but at least you may have got the sense what are in this book. And he is the man of ideas. And most of the ideas you can find discussed in this book. So please, if you get opportunity to have this book, please go through the book. And I would like to say one thing. One of the thinker, as French thinker, Foucault used to say, "I write book not so that the idea emerged from that, so that another book emerged from that idea." But not necessarily written by me. Maybe others can write on that. So the ideas promoted or proposed by Ram Madhavji may inspire us to rethink on these lines or on these issues and write and reflect, may come in our reflections, our writing. When we are organizing this kind of program, book discussion, and I was telling to the people that Ram Madhavji will be with us. अच्छा बीजेपी वाले जो अच्छा वो संघ वाले जो तो I always try to contest. He is a thinker, he is social activist, so you must have got idea that he is the person who is advocating not be bounded by the ideology, be the person of the ideals, ideology to ideals. And ideology, as we know, ideology is the term emerged from idola. Idola is a parda. पर्दा होता है जो आपकी आंख को ढक देता है. So ideology in that way obstruct you to see the reality. So become man of the ideals. हमारे गुरु प्रोफेसर टीसी पांडे साहब यहाँ कहा करते थे कि there is ideology, ideals and reality. तो हमेशा हमें ideal सोचना चाहिए, reality से तभी हम आगे बढ़ सकते हैं. तो imagineering, what he is saying, was proposing imagineering कि हमको कहाँ पहुँचना है. Even for social science research, we need to be very imaginary in this way. क्योंकि हम सारे एक क्राइसिस से गुजर रहे हैं. Even social science research is suffering through a crisis because entire state, the politics, the way he critiques the politics, कैसे कर रहा है. तो मुझे लगता है कि इस book आपको और ज़्यादा whatever he couldn't say here, maybe you can find in this book. और मैं कहता हूँ कि जो किताब में कह चुके होते हैं, हर किताब में वो भी होता है जो हम नहीं कह चुके होते हैं, जिससे एक नई बात निकलती है. तो मे बी यू कैन ट्रेस इन दिस रिव्यू व्हाट ही हैज नॉट येट टोल्ड, और बाद में इनके अगले राइटिंग्स में आएंगे. सो मुझे लगता है कि नाउ प्रोसीड फॉर थैंक्स.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sir. And I would like to thank Sri Ram Madhavji for answering the questions and clarifying the doubts of audience. I hope our esteemed guests have enjoyed today's book discussion. Now it's a formal vote of thanks. So for this, I request Professor K, who is Professor of Economics at the Institute, for formal vote of thanks. Sir.
Very powerful and very good ideas delivered in a language understood by the common. Congratulations. You are convinced with your arguments, the way you have presented it. This book is not only well known in India, it is worldwide. I came to know about the book in November while I was in US. So you can imagine, this is all around the globe. India is first. You quoted, like I said, who wrote 2,000 years of economic history of the world, where India was. India is first. Our global exports reached up to 60%. China was nowhere. Furthermore, beyond that, I quote Ibn Battuta, he traveled India, Europe, Africa, China, Asia. He says the best abundance, provisions, and best I have seen anywhere in the world is in the villages of Bengal. Bengal means India. So he visited. There is education. All our institutions, nowhere in the world universities like Takshashila, Uttamshila, Nalanda, which were burned, which were thrown to the ashes. We are first. Who know about that? You thought of writing this title itself shows that how you think of our nationalism, which at the time of constitution making, as you have rightly pointed out, was not even thought as a nation. We are caste entities, we are cultural entities, we are language-wise, linguistic states reorganization in 1956. Yes, we must emerge as a nation. In economics, we talk of the distributive justice. Distributive justice we teach in our classrooms is reflected by not by GDP, it is reflected by per capita income. After globalization, what happened in India? In terms of billionaires, we are fourth or fifth in the world. But in terms of per capita income, Bhadosa has already put where our position lies. The real dream will come true. Antyodaya will be ensured only when our per capita income, each man in the last margin of the society is ensured justice. Ramarajya, I would little bit add, sir, because I never asked you a question because I knew that I have some opportunity to speak in front of you. Our three great national thinkers, Gandhi, Vinoba, and Deendayal, you have already stated there. And even Gandhi has given us clear cut. This is the democracy we are following is indirect. Where each individual, not majority, as we have stated, is given justice. Gram Swaraj, direct participatory democracy, not indirect representative. How can a population of 10 lakhs is represented by one member of parliament? This was the idea of Gandhi, which found place in the directive principles of the state policy. We all know that in our constitution, not in the mandatory part of our constitution. Sir, I will not speak at this moment because Thanksgiving is a different kind of job. Yes, we have to start imagineering as our Prime Minister is imagineering. When he came to power in 14, he was imagineering how I will double the income of farmers by 2022. Now he is imagineering how we will become the 5 trillion economy by 2025. This is imagineering. Let us imagine here. Let us contemplate what these three great thinkers in modern times visualized for India. Thank you very much, sir, for coming to the institute. As our director has already aspired and requested you, please visit us sometimes in future. We are the greenest campus in UP. You will love if you stay here for some time. That would be so nice of you. On behalf of the institute, my colleagues, faculty, Institute of Allahabad, we thank you very much for visiting us and giving an opportunity to listen to you your powerful ideas about the nation building. First, say the nation building. Our chairperson, who is so meticulous in coming in time. I was in Agra, Indian Economic Association Conference as managing editor of its journal and publications. Professor Patimundi was invited. He came there well in time, and the organizers were not able to make his time. After half an hour, his lecture was completed. This is what is required of us. Fine. Thank you, sir, for being with us as head of our family. We hope to grow under your leadership. Our director has requested you, managed you, insisted his invitation that you came here. We are thankful to you. Professor Majumdar has already summarized the book very well in the beginning. Thank you, Professor Majumdar. Our Master of Ceremony, Professor Kunal, all faculty, media, and students, our staff who is engaged in this all work, even who are messed up, who will be cooking the lunch. I thank all of you. Thank you very much. It's a delight. It's a treat to our ideas, academic ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Just a small apology to online participants virtually who are with us, but they could not raise questions due to some time constraint and certain technical problems. I apologize on behalf of the student for them. So now, finally, thank you so much to all. Thank you. Okay.